You know what time it is. You know what time it is.
How firm thy friendship. Oh, how
you know what time it is. I'm brawl with them boys of the fall. You know what time it is. On the ground with a nose for the ball. You know what time it is. Blood, sweat, and them tears for this game. Leaving it all out on the field with no fear for you lames. Yeah, you know what time it is. Come brawl with them boys of the fall. Covered in gray and scarlet, massive, stiff arms to your jaw. We breaking it. We sick of seeing you clowns with the crown. We taking it.
What's up, Buckeye Nation? Welcome to the Buckeye Boys, where we talk about college football with real fans. I'm Mello, that's Sean, and that's our special guest today, Ben Hartsock. How you guys doing today?
Good.
I'm doing great.
Good. So today we're going to interview Ben, and Sean's going to lead this one. So Sean, go ahead and take over. I actually got to run because my daughter has a college call with her head coach. So I want to be there just to hear what they have to say to her, but I'll be back shortly.
You getting a big package? Got a big NIL package, man?
She's not. You have to be on the national team for that, you know. And she made like so what they do is they do like polls by areas and stuff like that. So she made the area national poll, but she never made it to the full roster out in Chula Vista, California. So it's kind of hard to get that far, but she has goals as she goes through colleges, and she's actually talking to college coaches and telling them that's one of her goals, and if they can help her reach her goals. So that's another check on the box on how she's deciding where she's going to go.
Good deal. Good luck.
Thank you. I'll see you guys shortly.
All right, cool, Mello. How you doing today, Ben?
Doing great, man. Glad to be on with you.
Glad to finally have you on here, man. I know tried to get you for a while and things didn't line up, so pleasure to have you on. I was wanted to get your take on this year on the team. What do you think losing to the loss to Michigan was actually benefited the team?
I mean, I understand that sentiment, that logic. I'm taking a bunch of all of my friends in the Sirius XM world that I live in. You know, you got guys that played at LSU and Georgia Tech and Oregon, and they're all telling me, you Ohio State guys, you've got to disconnect from this Michigan thing. You guys got to chill on that. You got to relax. And as an analyst that works on a national program, I have to be pragmatic. I have to be objective. I will lay flowers at Michigan's feet when I need to, and I'll be critical of the Buckeyes when I have to. But when it talks to that Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, it's the most unreasonable part of my character.
Sure.
And I know that, but I'm not able to disconnect from it. Even though I know that I'm being irrational and unreasonable, I can't disconnect from it. And that's why Ohio State fans are so passionate. That's why Coach Day he will grind himself to a dust to figure out what's happening, that the run that Michigan has had. And I support it. And it's the right thing. Like I'm during the darkest of days after the loss to Michigan, before we got into the playoff, I was so thankful that I didn't have to reconcile. I spent that whole couple of weeks saying both things can be true. Ryan Day is the right coach. I stand by him all the way through, but being 1-4 against Michigan is not acceptable.
Sure.
And so that's for Ross Bjork to work out. And Coach Ross Bjork has stood by Coach. Thankfully, I support that 100%. Did it help the team get there? I don't know. There's so many things that go into a season. It's hard to quantify that metric. I'm not willing to say losing to Michigan made the national championship worth it. I'm simply saying we lost to Michigan and we had the best possible conclusion to the worst possible situation to be losing to the rival.
Now, do you think now that the way college football has changed, it's not like it used to be. If you lost to Michigan, it basically ended your season because you had to beat them to go to the Rose Bowl. You had to beat them to win the Big Ten title, and you had to beat them to get a chance at the national championship. Now you can lose the game like you did this year, and you can still make it. I mean, do you think that kind of takes away from the importance of the game?
Yeah, this is the first time in history that's ever happened. You're exactly right. It's good insight that this is simply the first time that losing to Michigan still allowed for a path to all of the championship run that they went on. My senior year, defending the 02 championship, I was a senior in 03. We lost to Michigan. The game that haunts me of all of my college and NFL career, that loss to Michigan my senior year is the one that haunts me. That loss knocked us out of the chance at a BCS championship back to back. And so like now we live in a world where it is disconnected. I don't see it losing its luster. I don't, just because that's what Ohio State fans are.
Sure.
But if we live in a bizarro world that we can't get this thing right against Michigan, but we still keep stacking championships, it'll be fascinating to see what fans do. I think old heads like I won't ever get past it, but maybe the younger generation will feel differently because that's their only known reality. Like there's several generations that didn't know anything other than Ohio State's dominance. Yep. And now we've been back on the other side of specifically the rivalry, and it's just really hard to reconcile. Because
I'm 46, so I grew up during the Cooper years, so I got to see what it was like to have your dreams crushed. You know, so many teams like the 96 team. I mean, there was so many teams that had the chance to go on and lost that game, and it just destroyed it destroyed for a year. You were down. So I totally get what you're saying. One question we kind of posed to some of the former players is, if say it was this year you were a senior, would you have taken a loss to Michigan if you were still able to win a natty?
Yeah, it's like trying to pick a kid, you know. Gotcha. That's like it's an impossible question. Like I said, I think the only way I can frame it is the worst possible end of the regular season. We got the best possible postseason out of it. As a result, we got the best possible postseason. Am I bummed that we didn't get a chance to play in the Big Ten championship? Absolutely. Does a Big Ten championship matter? Yes, certainly. But we didn't get the chance to participate. You still made the playoff. This is the new world of the 12-team playoff, and that's going to expand in the not-too-distant future. So you just have to compete on the battlefield and the rules that are of the battlefield at that time, and this is where we are. And it is awkward. I still feel odd about it, but it doesn't take away. It should not take away one bit these guys that are champions, the Travion Hendersons and Jack Sawyer and Will Howard, all of those guys. There's no asterisk at all, but you do have to also live with the reality that you never beat Michigan. Like it's a weird time to be alive, but we got to get used to it.
Could you imagine a year where you would play Michigan 2 or 3 times in a year? I mean, isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah, that's still, I think, is a plausible future that we have to get accustomed to, is that the end of the traditional rivalry game, if you boil it down to the lowest possible stakes, it could be for jersey color in the Big Ten championship. Like that's that both teams are comfortably in the 1 and 2 spot. We know that we'll be playing against each other in Lucas Oil, and so all you're competing for in the horseshoe or in the big house is for home jersey color. And it'll still be hard fought because it matters. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. If we're going to expand the playoff, this is the unintended consequences are diminished stakes to these regular games. And the stakes of the regular season as a whole were diminished. We had 2 and 3 loss teams make it into the playoff. And I was a 4-team apologist, and I'll raise my hand to say that the 12-team, at least this iteration of the 12-team, it lived up to the hype. I didn't feel like the Ohio State-Oregon game at Eugene was diminished because the stakes were lessened, right? In previous eras, 4-team, that loss could have been the disqualifier, right? So there were plenty of big games that still lived up to billing and I didn't feel like were diminished. Now, the story of this season was not only did we have the excitement of the expanded playoffs, so we're looking at teams 9, 10, 11, 12. Also, we were having carnage at the front that Ohio State lost to Michigan inexplicably, and Georgia was struggling down the stretch. So really from 1 to 12, all the way till college football playoff selection night were really compelling stories. I don't know that will happen every year, but it was a good first opening volley for the 12-team format.
Because I thought 12 was too much. I thought 8 would have been a better number, just because I thought, usually you're not going to have 12 teams that could legitimately win the title. I thought maybe it would be kind of watered down. But I thought, like you said, for the first year, I thought it was pretty exciting and it lived up to the hype.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
If there was, say they came to you and they said, Ben, if there was 2 things you could do or 1 thing you could do to change the format that we just used to make it better, what would you suggest?
Honestly, I know that there's some momentum to get the seeding straightened out, that the conference champions shouldn't, the fact that Clemson got a bye and Arizona State got a bye, and because of that, Oregon got a raw deal, the way that shaked out. I think that's going to be the exception, not the rule. Conference championships, because if you go to just straight seeding, again, it's another weakening of a conference championship. And I think that every Power 4 conference championship should be held in high regard. So there should be a reward in place. And so I know that you can still talk about, the getting home games, maybe what get guaranteed, or, how that will all work out. I would let it ride at least for a couple of more years, I think it's a little rushed to change something after one data point. I think we need multiple 3, 4, 5 years to adjust it. But shoot, we're 3, 4, 5 years. They're going to be locking this thing in for longer term. So they want to tweak it so that they can get the foreseeable future straightened out. I
mean, if they go to straight seeding, wouldn't that kind of ruin the championship games? Wouldn't you be further ahead just to do away with the championship games and kind of do the way they used to do, where they just, whoever had the best record was the conference champion?
Yeah. The conference championship games are perfect examples of different people have different motivations. The conference wants to have it because it's lucrative and it's they can sell advertising. And so we'll watch it as fans because we'll stomach no matter what they put in front of us. We want to watch more football.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen. It's just whether or not it gets the majority of the Big Ten championship games, a lot of times were blowouts anyways. And so they weren't necessarily exciting games down the stretch, but I argue they're never going to go. They haven't one single time in history shrunk the NCAA college basketball bracket. It's only expanded. So I don't think they're going to shorten. I don't think they're going to lose any college championship games. Maybe when they expand the playoff to 14, which is what we're getting some discussion about, I would love to say, let's make the first round of the playoff be the conference championships, like the AFC and the NFC in the NFL. That to me would be, an acceptable way to let's keep those games important, where winner or go home, but not add more wear and tear onto the players themselves.
Gotcha. That sounds right. I want to talk to you a little bit about your time at Ohio State. When did you start getting recruited by Ohio State? Were you junior year?
Yeah, I was I predated stars, so I wasn't even a star. I don't know what I would have been. I know I would have been high, but coming from Unionta High School in Ross County, not a pipeline type of school. I love Unionta, love my teammates, still keep in touch with many of them, but we weren't a pipeline type school like the St. Xavier's or the Upper Arlingtons or things like that. So when it came to recruiting, I was starting to get recruited as a sophomore, junior by MAC schools, Pittsburgh, West Virginia. The first Big Ten school to show any interest in me was Purdue, and they wanted me to be a center. But I knew I wanted to go to Ohio State. I grew up, Buckeye fan. My mom, my dad, my aunts, uncles, everybody, my brother, sister, everybody went there. So I started recruiting Ohio State. If John Cooper was speaking to a touchdown club, I went. If Andy Geiger was going to speak at a Rotary, I went, and I would go, and I had a pre-written out letter that my name's Ben Hartsock. I don't know if this worked, but it worked. I don't know if it helped or not, but I wanted to let Ohio State know, hey, I'm an Ohio kid that wants to come play for you. Sure. And I know that I don't come from a big major school, but I want to come play here. But I went to their camps, and I think the camps are really where I started to catch the eye, because my high school tape was against competition they weren't familiar with. It wasn't as known of the Side Valley Conference isn't well known. But when I went up to those camps, and I went all the way back to 8th grade, just as a camper. When I got into high school, I was hoping to catch the eye. But I went to camp, and, there was TJ Duckett was there, and Matt Wilhelm were at these camps. And shoot, I was roommates with Chris Sims, the camp going into my senior year, who ended up going to Texas.
Yeah.
And so I think they saw that I could compete with the talent that they felt comfortable with, to do the drills, the 7-on-7, the inline stuff. I ran a decent enough 40. But ultimately, I need to verify this, because I've told this story before. My view of what ultimately captured their attention, it wasn't a spectacular play in a 7-on-7 drill, or it wasn't my 40-yard dash that everybody did. It was on the auxiliary field, way off to the side, and I was working with a graduate assistant at the time. It was, you got the head coach, you got the coach, you got the coordinator, or the recruiting coordinator. Like, there's hierarchy. I was working with a GA off to the side. His name's John Hill, and we were just doing blocking drills, and I think he was impressed with. This would have been a time for the front runners, the superstars, kind of take their foot off the gas, right? Like, nobody's. Let's save it. We're not really doing anything. This is just filler time. But I was doing the drill well and doing it at a high level. And that caught the eye of that grad assistant. And then he went and got Bill Conley, who was the tight end coach and the recruiting coordinator at the time. So he came over and watched me. And next thing you know, John Cooper was there looking at me. And that to me was that fork in the road moment. I always tell young players, hey, it may not be at the state championship game or a 7-on-7 drill or running the 40 at the camp that catches the eye. Everything you do is being evaluated. And so for me, I think that's where my fork in the road moment that my recruiting opened up was that moment off to the side during a summer camp.
Well, that's a good point, because you never know who's watching you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you didn't take any time off or any plays off or any drill off. You kept going hard, and that's what got you noticed. I mean,
yeah, you got to be ready.
That's a great, point to tell these young kids. I mean, no taking, you can't afford to set out a drill or take anything for granted. Now, when you were there, you had the coaching change. What was that like going from Coach Cooper to Coach Trussell? I mean, I know Coach Trussell wasn't like the biggest name being discussed at the time, because you had like Chris Spielman, Glenn Mason was a hot name, Tyrone Willingham.
Yeah.
Then there was, Trussell, who, I mean, he did win a couple of championships at, Youngstown State, but not on the highest level.
Well, I think the world of Coach Cooper, I know he has to wear his record versus Michigan, and I think he wears it just fine. I grew up a fan of Ohio State, and I think of the legacy of his players and the success, the Joey Galloways and the Andy Katzenmoyers and the Eddie Jordan, the amount of talent that John and the level that Ohio State rose to nationally to coach a Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, he didn't have some of those championship moments or those wins over Michigan, but he's the coach that made me fall in love with Ohio State, and I'm thankful for and obviously he gave me a scholarship, so he changed my family's legacy forever. Mm-hmm. But I know my true freshman year, the year my redshirt year, the year I didn't play, we didn't go to a bowl game. And I'll tell you, that was during that time, I think it was the first time since the 80s that we hadn't gone to a bowl game, and the world was off its axis in the state of Ohio. And so that pressure was not lost on any of us in that locker room. So we knew, and that was in 99. And then in 2000, it was a little bit better, but we lost to South Carolina in an Outback Bowl, and he was let go. And everybody goes through there's two facets of it. There's the team as a whole. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And then there's also you individually of what's this going to mean for me? Are they going to clean house, all new position coaches, all of the work ethic capital that I had earned, my reputation over the first 2 years is done and over with the fresh face. And then they hired Jim Tressel, who we all, just like you said, he was a name that nobody knew about. And we heard very quickly about his success at Youngstown State. But when you're talking about comparing to Willingham or Glenn Mason or other of those more household names at the time, he was an unknown. But I was there at the shot the night that Coach Tress got on the microphone and said, in 310 days, you'll be proud in Ann Arbor, Michigan of our guys. And it gives me chill bumps even to this day, still thinking about it. And in that moment, we all knew, oh, okay, this thing's for real. Like it was an incredible first impression for a coach for us. He earned a lot of our respect by sticking his neck and our neck out on the line in a way that Coach Cooper was by that point in his career trying to minimize some of the traditions and histories of the Michigan rivalry. And Coach Tressel, day one, he makes that declaration. And the earliest memories of Coach Tressel's meetings is we went back to learning history of Ohio State. He was teaching us about Paul Brown. He was teaching us about Chick Cassidy. He was
Hopalong Cassidy.
Chick Harley. And Hopalong and Hop Cassidy. So we were learning. It was just the opposite of Coach Cooper was running a modern program and doing modern things. Coach Tressel did the same modern things, but he very much was old school and looked back towards the history and reconnected Ohio State's to its roots.
I heard heard from Kirk Barton. He would tell us stories on Scoop about how Tressel would bring the old guys in to have you talk. They would talk to you guys before Michigan and tell you guys what it was like to lose to Michigan and how you didn't want to, you'd have Earl come in and he said Jack Tatum came in.
And Chris Spielman's the one that I'll never forget. It was the night before or the morning of the Michigan game. And Chris Spielman, who's, the guy played with a broken neck. So, the intensity that he lives with. And he spoke from the front of our meeting, and he was on the edge of mania. If he'd have had a helmet, he would have put it on and he would have gone onto the field. And he talked about how he was walking around the stadium since 4 a.m, chugging coffee and just the anticipation that we all were worked up to play to play in that game. And even still, him being there and speaking to us took us to yet another threshold that I'll never forget. I don't remember specifically a lot of the phrases that he said. I just remember his energy was absolutely palpable.
Nice. Now I heard Tressel used to he kind of brought you guys together as a team and did a lot of team bonding exercises.
Yeah.
Like I heard you guys would have to carry around a 8x10 card, and you had to know where people were from, the high school they went to, and the position they went to.
Yeah, it was a test that we would have to take once or twice during training camp. There was it was a spreadsheet 0 through 99 of the roster, and you would have to fill in that Simon Frazier was from Upper Arlington High School and lived in Upper Arlington, and Tim Anderson grew up in Clyde, Ohio, and went to Clyde High School, and Craig Krenzel from Detroit, Michigan, went to Henry Ford too. I still remember these to this day. This is just it's such a small little gesture that Coach Tress, we were, college kids like, come on, Coach, what are we doing, right? But you see that he's teaching little life lessons of the value of, hey, this he's more than just number 15. He's more than just a guy you line up next to. No, he's from somewhere. He represents a community. He represents a family, and we should have the dignity and the respect for one another to learn about each other a little bit. Memories like that are far sweeter today, because I think a lot of us grumbled back in the day when we had to do those quizzes from time to time.
Well, I heard Coach Tressel say that, the more you know about somebody, the closer you are. When it falls on hard times, the more, you want to put the effort for that person.
Yeah. And when you talk about those team bonding experiences, one that is obviously near and dear to my heart is the team came to my family farm, the national championship year. And we did it then again, my senior year. It was, I give the Michigan, I'm working in broadcasting now. I've got Michigan buddies, John Jansen. I said, you guys, Michigan going to the Vatican or going on trips to Africa, like that's just glitzy, glamoury stuff. Ohio State did it first, and we did it gritty style. We came to the farm, and we milked cows, and we learned how to weld, and we shot shotguns and did bow and arrow, and just got the team together. And what's funny is, over the course of when I went off to the NFL after every game, all the Buckeyes, we'd always link up and see each other if I'm on one team and they're on another. And every one of those guys, they didn't want to talk about a game versus Michigan or the national championship. They're like, man, you remember when Lydell Ross wrecked that John Deere Gator into the woods at your farm? Or you remember when Coach Dressel couldn't shoot a clay pigeon to save his life? Like those are it really is. It has nothing to do with making you bigger, faster, stronger, or more likely to win a football game, but it absolutely made us a better team. And I believe that it made us a better, more likely to win games as a result.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize till you look back at that 01 season, Tressel's first year there, a lot of those losses that you guys had were very close games.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think I personally think that win against Michigan up in Michigan kind of catapulted you guys into the next year?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, to kind of draw that line in the sand in 2001. I love chapters in history. I love that this team of Ohio State just got to win a championship, and that's their chapter's written that way. My chapter has a national championship in 02, but maybe the thing I'm most proud of for the teams that I was a part of in that period of time was we drew the line in the sand and said, we're not going to lose to Michigan anymore. And we got that win in 2001, and then we got another one in 2002. And then that's why it hurt me so much my senior year. Coach Tressel's only loss to Michigan was my senior season. That had 100. It was the 100th game between Ohio State and Michigan, and the patch still chews on me even to this day. But yeah, but the reality was the 22, 23 year run that Ohio State went on, where I don't remember exactly what the record was, but the tide was turned in our chapter. So that was part of our story. And then the other thing, this is a little more national college football, is we ended the Miami Hurricane dynasty. Those are two awesome notes in college sports history that the real ones know. That was it for them. They were those who knew what Miami was during that era, going all the way back to Vinny Testaverde, but all the way up into the Jeremy Shockeys and the Greg Olsons and the Clinton Portises, to knock that team off of its perch was a pretty cool accomplishment.
I mean, they only lost one game in 2 years going into that game. I mean,
that 01 Miami team was maybe the most talented team ever put on a college football field. And they won in 01, beat Nebraska in the national championship. Ken Dorsey's one of the best college quarterbacks to ever play. And Andre Johnson and Willis McGahee, and I mean, just on and on and on. Yeah. So they won all the games that went undefeated in 01, and in 02 were undefeated all the way up until the game where we were 13-point underdogs. I mean, now that gambling is so prevalent, I think more people realize how big of a 13-point spread a game is, but to have a national championship with that big a spread was massive. And we went in and we knew after the first play, everybody said in that game at the Fiesta Bowl that we couldn't run, we couldn't keep up with their speed. And the first play from scrimmage, Will Smith went right around their tackle and tackled Ken Dorsey like the tackle was sitting still. And we were like, that's it. We knew, game on. We can run with these guys. And we kept up. And then as the game progressed, we knew as long as the game stayed close, that played to our advantage, because the Hurricanes had been so dominant. They'd boat raced everybody. They were just lighting up scoreboards. That season in 02, we won a bunch of rock fights. It was overtime versus Illinois. It was Holy Buckeye to get the win over Purdue. It was the last second interception for Michigan. So we knew if it got down to a tight game, that played to our favor, and it certainly got to that tight game, double overtime, and the rest is history.
I mean, they were probably shocked because they had no one hanging with them all year. They're used to blowing teams out, and here you guys are, going blow for blow with them. It probably, they were probably having panic the whole game. They couldn't believe it. Yeah,
there's something to punching a bully in the mouth. They had been a bully, and a lot of times, I mean, playing in the NFL, I was playing against the Patriots, where a lot of times the Patriots would walk into the building and the game was already won. That even in the NFL, they had such a mental leg up on everybody that even in the NFL, they could win games that way. So college, it could have been even more so, but we, by that point, had felt such a team of destiny because we had so many close calls. Shoot, for crying out loud, even Cincinnati took last-second heroics at Cincinnati Stadium, at the Bengal Stadium, early in the season, that we just felt like this thing was a foregone conclusion, that we were going to find a way to be competitive. And when it got down to being competitive at the end of the game, we were built for those moments, and it came through.
It's funny that you say that because we did have Tim Anderson, Donnie Nicky on. We interviewed those guys, and Tim said the same thing about that first drive. You know, Will came around and made that play, and they're just like, man, these guys aren't so tough after all.
Yeah, it really that was a huge moment early in that game, because one of the other things you maybe have heard through the lore of that game was there was a flyer that got passed around of a party that was already scheduled by some of the former Hurricane players, that they had already put together their celebration plans. And we had even gotten our hands on the Fiesta Bowl gear, and the Fiesta Bowl gear, at least in that era, it was a hat that they would stick a patch on that, you don't know who's going to win. Well, they picked a very obviously pastel Hurricane-esque. It agreed more with them. And we're like, listen, Scarlet, that's going to clash with the scarlet and gray Ohio State Block O is going to patch on that hat, is going to clash with that hat. But we felt just that made it even that much more sweet, because nobody really gave us a chance in that game.
That year, some people might not know it, but diehard fans and, football nerds like me, you were part of two very historic plays that season. I mean, the Holy Buckeye, people might not realize this, but the ball was supposed to go to you.
Yeah.
And
we ran the exact same play the play prior.
Yeah.
And that play, I've got it on a T-shirt. I've got it from Homage, I think. It's King Wright 64 Y Shallow swap. I caught 30-some passes that season. We ran that. I caught Y Shallow probably 28 of the 30 whatever passes on, because that was our number one play. It was our absolute bread and butter. It had an answer for every kind of defense. And so we ran that on third and, 15 or something. And I caught the pass and wasn't able to get the first down. Guys will rib me a hard time saying that we didn't need all the heroics if you'd have just converted on third down, but I was able to get to fourth and 1. And they called the play again, thinking just an easy conversion. We weren't going for the whole thing. Throw it to me again. But Stuart Schweigert, the safety, came down and covered me well. And Krenzel looked up and it wasn't drawn up to go to Jenkins. And if you've heard the stories, it was Jenkins had to adjust, because the swap portion of it was for Chris Gamble and Mike Jenkins to swap either the post or the dig. Well, Gamble, for whatever reason, didn't run the swap version of it. So Mike Jenkins adjusted on the fly. Krenzel, that goes back to those guys had been around 4 years together. They had 4 years of lived history together. That in that instant, under blitz pressure, Krenzel's able to step up in the pocket. They adjust on the fly, and I get to be the guy. I always tell people I didn't score many touchdowns, but I was always first on the scene to celebrate. So I'm down there hugging Mike Jenkins, celebrating that moment.
What was your thought when that ball went up in the air like that and you saw him throw it? Were you like, oh?
Initially, as the play progressed, I thought, dang it, I'm not open. So Krenzel's. My thought was Craig's going to run it. He was the athletic quarterback before athletic quarterbacks were a thing. He time and time again kept drives alive by scrambling and keeping moving the chains. But when I saw the ball go over my head, I thought, well, this is it, like all or nothing. And we all see that play through the lens of the TV screen. I love that my lived memory is watching this. Is seeing it go over my head. It's just such a unique, awesome perspective. Can't believe it. Living where I live in Georgia, and I work on a national program. So people from LSU, people from USC, maybe don't know that Holy Buckeye story. Mm-hmm. I love telling them that story, because that in the world of Ohio State fandom, that one's up there. That's up there with Zeke and 85 yards to the south. And I don't know if we've named the pass to Jeremiah Smith has been named yet, but like those are the plays that are part of Ohio State lore.
and it's part of that builds your, that whole season. That's just another chapter in the book. You guys were down. I rewatched that game probably about a few months before we interviewed Tim and Donnie, and the Purdue fans were sitting there chanting to the bench, overrated, giving you guys the business, and that happened, and just watching those fans put their heads down. I think a lot of people also forget how athletic Craig was and how much he ran. I didn't realize it until rewatching the national championship game, how many called quarterback runs there were.
Yeah, called quarterback runs, or just him pulling it down and running. Our offense was not prolific. It's funny. When I look back to those old games, the first thing I think is, man, I love high definition TV because that old stuff is so grainy. But two, I just think about how good our defense, and an inverse, it's the Tressalism. His recipe was relentless defense and mistake-free and opportunistic offense. Mistake-free and opportunistic offense. And I was like, that's not very exciting. I wanted to be dominant. I wanted to be what we see now, lighting up scoreboards, and we just weren't. And whenever I watch this, I think, man, we were ball control. We were there. The whole trestle ball thing is real. And it's funny to see even remnants of that still kind of exist, and the impact of, that Coach Tressel had on PJ Fleck, and how Minnesota is committed to the run game. But it was complementary football. And in that era, it was a recipe for a championship.
Well, in that year, you guys had Nuge, and you also had Andy Groom, who was a fantastic punter.
Awesome.
A lot of guys down. The field position, how you guys flip field position all the time was such a weapon.
Yeah, not a lot of Sports Center moments, though, when you're talking about the field position battle.
Yeah, no doubt. That's real old school football.
Yeah.
Then the other play that people might not realize is Maurice Correct gets a lot of credit for, because he's the one who stripped the ball from Taylor, but that ball was coming to you. Yeah.
And another one of those moments in history, a lot of people remember that play, but they don't remember the way it looked from where I saw it. Because in those situations where we didn't throw the ball often, and if we were throwing it, we were throwing it to Jenkins or Chris Gamble or Drew Carter. So when the ball would come my way, I was excited. And I'll never forget before the play, there was a timeout, and I was ribbing Krenzel in the huddle. Like, I think sometimes it's fun to remind people we were just kids.
Yeah.
We were, and we're in the huddle, and we all recognized it was a real big deal, but at the same time, we were goofing. We were loose. We were fun. We had a ton of fun together. And I remember in the huddle talking about Krenzel, man, hit your boy. Championship. Like, let's get me a tutty in the national championship game. And I've heard Claret talk about that some, how he's like, Hartsock was trying to grease the skids. I guess so. It was more fun. I was 20 years old, whatever. But in that moment, you lock eyes. In the moment of the play, as a receiver, okay, the quarterback is engaging and starting to throw the ball my way. I had enough time slows down that I could see that. And so the ball is in the air, and in my mind, I'm thinking, don't drop it. And you're going to catch a touchdown in the national championship game. That's incredible. I only scored 5 touchdowns in my entire career. So to catch another one and for it to be in the national championship, what an deal. And just like that, then there's that's like the hand of God. It was Sean Taylor's hand comes in and no.
And you're like, no.
Yeah, it's all taken from me. And down I watch, and I fall down in a heap in the back of the end zone, and Sean Taylor's streaking down the sideline. And I didn't see, bodies were all everywhere. I didn't see it, but I heard the crowd. You could tell something happened 40, 50 yards downfield. And I said, okay, something weird happened, because you heard the Miami fans go crazy, and then there was a shift, and it was then everybody looks up, and Claret's got the ball. And like in the world, I think it was Bill Rabinowitz from the Dispatch did the biggest defensive plays in Ohio State history. And I don't know if that was number one, but it's kind of funny to think of Maurice Claret, running back, being involved in one of the biggest defensive plays in Ohio State history, because it absolutely was. And it's perfect representative of what Claret was. Everybody knew about his talent. Everybody knew about his personality, and Claret will tell you he bristled, like he was a bristly, elbows out kind of guy, but he's also that same temperament is what makes plays like that happen. Like, him seeing, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
He didn't sit there and pout about it. He went and chased the ball down and made a heroic play in that game.
Man, and that changed that was a big swing in momentum right there. Because you took that away from Miami. They thought,
so many things had to fall the right way for us to get that game. And that absolutely is one of the biggest.
And another big play was in the overtime when it was 4th down and 14 and Trenzo found Jenkins.
a 4th and 14 conversion just to keep the drive alive, to keep the game alive, was just massive. I saw that one. I love social media now where these clips will come through every once in a while, and every time that one comes up, that one to me, the Jenkins 4th down conversion comeback route is one of the underappreciated giant. Most people remember the pass interference on Gamble. Most people remember C. Grant on the blitz. Most people remember Maurice Claret with that. That Michael Jenkins 4th down conversion is often overlooked, but equally as important.
Now this year, when you looked at the tight end play this year that's coming up, how do you think they'll use Jelani Thurman and Max Clare together?
It's the plight of being Ohio State tight end is well documented. There have been athletic types to come through, but at the end of the day, when you look back, going all the way back even to my era, it has been guys built like me. Cade Stover is very similar. He caught more passes and was more prolific. Sure. But it's him. It's Nick Vanette. It's Jeremy Ruckert. Like these guys that go on to have long, productive, successful NFL careers often aren't focal points of their offense going all the way back to my era. And certainly now we are in the midst of a generational run of wide receiver talent. And so there's just not enough footballs to be thrown. There's not enough plays in the game. So I don't know as much about the next guys up after Stover, and now G. Scott had his time, and he had a couple of huge plays this season in the postseason that, aside from the impact he had on the team and his legacy as a leader, made big plays as well. So the next generation, I expect them even I don't know the heights and weights and necessarily all of their stuff yet. I know they're going to be asked to put their hand in the dirt, and they're going to have to engage with the 6 technique, block some outside linebackers, and do some double teams. And don't fret, because you can carve out a real nice life for yourself by doing that. Like
you guys you're kind of the start of the mold that they had. There was you and Vanette, Heiserman. A lot of you guys got to go to the league doing what you're doing. What they're doing.
And the role of being a blocking tight end is, there's been generations. Well, Nick Vanette's, I think, is a perfect example. I think Vanette's ended up playing 9, 10, 11 years. Sure. Ohio State fans know him, but I don't think NFL fans know him quite as well. But the guy did the job and did it well. And
I did.
Whether it be Luke Stocker had a run, Chris Manhertz, there are guys that are just as anonymous as me nationally that played at Ohio State, that are having long, successful NFL careers. And I want Cade Stover to be a Pro Bowler. I hope he gets 100 passes thrown to him. Sure. But if he doesn't, he's still going to be valuable protecting quarterback, opening holes for running backs, and all that.
Well, Ben, I got to wrap this up. Mello had an emergency, so I'd like to have you come back on if you'd be willing to come back on again with us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Yep, always enjoy it. Excited to talk to you.
Well, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it. And so for everybody and for all the people in the chat, we just say, we will talk to you guys tomorrow. We have a live show tomorrow. So until next time, OH.
IO. All right, guys.
Thanks.